Hey everyone, and welcome back to the news. I have got amazing gaming stories for you today. We have CD Projekt Red, a little bit about their future, them crushing some rumors. We have got a funky little situation with Valve and Dolphin. We've got follow-up stories to the likes of Darktide and the Disco Elysium drama. Let's just say, whenever we were covering it initially, we certainly were suspicious of what one side was saying, and yeah. There's certainly more to that than the default sort of opinion of the press happened to be when all that came out. So, let's dive in. Number one, Dolphin-related chaos on Steam. Yes, if you wanted to grab the legendary Dolphin emulator to run ROMs of your legally purchased and held copies of Nintendo, GameCube, and Wii games on PC, nope, not going to happen. The latest update here is that they've had to stop things. Now, the way that they've always said, Dolphin does not provide any games. It is just a tool to run legally obtained copies of these games. Once you've dumped copies of your games into a compatible format, you can launch them directly from the emulator. Now, to many people, yes, you could dump your game in there, and you could maybe do a little switcheroo for a version of it that allowed you to run a game, maybe a really cool ROM hack, run a game with a bunch of community tweaks and fixes. I mean, goddamn, have you seen Breath of the Wild running at 4K? Whew! 4K 60, looking good, certainly beats 3 pixels, 10 frames a second. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but you get my drift. So it's something people are interested in because Nintendo is, just not willing to sort of provide really good hardware. Okay, so questions were actually brought to Nintendo by Valve. Valve saw Dolphin was going to come up here, and I think Valve, knowing that Nintendo are absolute hitmen in the legal department, they reached out. So Dolphin are claiming that Valve Legal reached out to Nintendo to ask them about this. And then that prompted a response in the form of a legal challenge from Nintendo on May 27th. This is addressed to Valve's legal document, and it says, legal department, and it says, because the emulator violates Nintendo's IP rights, this is to provide you, notice for your obligation to remove the offering of the Dolphin emulator from the Steam store. And they specifically mention that the software works by incorporating source code-based cryptographic keys without Nintendo's authorization, and therefore is circumventing copy protection. Now, initially there was confusion here over, even from Dolphin themselves, over this. So it wasn't a DMCA, this was just a standard cease and desist, legal removal notice. Hey, we're going to tell you this. They do cite, of course, DMCA as a motivating factor. So this is basically just remove this, or we're going to have to do the thing, and it would all suck if we had to do the thing, so just remove it so we don't have to do the thing. And then Valve complied. And that's basically that. And yeah, Dolphin on Steam is indefinitely postponed. So basically, there you go. Now, stuff. Because the status of emulation, in theory, is protected. But Dolphin Wii emulation has got a factor that may complicate that. So, Dolphin does distribute the Wii AES 128 common key, which is used to encrypt Wii game discs. So, from the perspective of Nintendo, that is infringement. Ultimately, though, Dolphin is still around. You can use it, you just won't be able to download it from Steam. Can you add an EXE to Steam? Yes. So, bit of a drama, but also much ado about nothing. I think if you know you want to use Dolphin, you already know that. And it's pretty dope. Check it out. All right, CD Projekt Red shutting down acquisition rumors and some other stuff. Right. Absolutely, everything was going on about this. A leaker suggested that they were potentially getting ready to be acquired by Sony. This went absolutely viral, and, none of it was actually true. And this ends up being a problem when it starts getting picked up enough that CDPR C-suite members actually feel the need to talk to Reuters because basically, we're going to get acquired. What does that mean about the stock price, right? Important things. So they go to Reuters to say, no, categorically, this is not happening. Instead, they would much rather focus on their financials that pretty much guarantee they don't need to be acquired because they're having a good time. Witcher 3 is actually one of the top 10 best-selling games of all time. 50 million units pushed, with 75 million units of the Witcher trilogy. Now, otherwise then, there is the layoffs and restructuring of Project Sirius at the Molasses Flood. and another 30 at the team managing Gwent. So those side things are being downplayed a bit, and instead, it's very much them doubling down on their big titles. And as time goes on here, you can see that support for Cyberpunk 2077 plus the next-gen version is going down and down and down and down. And, you know, their other projects are then growing. Of course, not that that's the end for Cyberpunk. This just represents the large amount of initial work that they needed to do. And that's because when you actually look at this chart, the large light blue here is Phantom Liberty, right? So this is just initial unscrewing Cyberpunk, and then really the lion's share of their staff working on that with, as we can see here from the, I suppose, Cyan line, the new Witcher game, which is codenamed Polaris. That is sort of the next big thing. And then, you know, other projects, stuff like that, Gwent-related stuff also factoring in. So overall then, they've got the new Witcher trilogy, and that is the next big thing that they're working on, which is this, you know, Polaris, this new Witcher game. And then there's also a Witcher 1 open world game, right? Basically, it's just, I mean, to keep Geralt, because, you know, we like him, he's our boy, they're doing Witcher 1. As like an expansive game, which is great, because Witcher 1 actually has got so many awesome things, but some of those combat animations are funny. It's a funky game, absolutely punching above their weight for the time, but I think this is something we'll absolutely, I mean, I love to see. So that they're probably going to have Polaris, then some more Geralt, and then, you know, the future of the new Witcher trilogy is pretty cool. Now, another group are sticking with The Witcher, and that is Netflix, because in a move of hubris, perhaps if we're being charitable, a move of faith, they have, following the filming of season 4 with Liam Hemsworth, probably, greenlit the 5th series. Of course, Henry Cavill's leaving. There was quite a lot of drama in and around that. Who knows how much of that is, you know, is even true. Rumours, scuttlebutt, it is what it is. I suppose if they're willing to greenlight this based on the filming of 4, then maybe they have confidence in Liam Hemsworth. That being said, Blood Origin happened. Blood Origin should have been used as like an expenses write-off. It is bad that Blood Origin happened to The Witcher, because it is a very bad show. And certainly it does have anyone worried about the future of that franchise with Netflix. As for other things then, well, of course, development in Cyberpunk 2077 is winding down. We are going to be seeing the Idris Elba-led, because that's sweet, Idris Elba's fucking awesome, Phantom Liberty be announced at Summer Games Fest. We'll probably see some stuff then. And after that, for them, it is full steam ahead for the future of the Cyberpunk brand, and of course the sequel to Polaris, right, the next Witcher. Now what's interesting though is this is presumably I say presumably a shorter development cycle, but also what we do know is it's not using Red Engine, right? They're using Unreal. So that, I'd say, probably means good things, and certainly in terms of like getting, you know, hiring developers onto these projects, if you are using a standard out of the box, like take Rare, Playground Games, there's 2 Microsoft studios, they use Unreal. All right, if a developer leaves one of them, they can move over here, and they're still using Unreal, so that's quite useful. Next then, I just want to call out Boltgun. I played Space Marine, off a certain Total Biscuits recommendation back in the day. I loved Space Marine. Space Marine 2 is coming out, but you can play the prequel to that, which is Boltgun. It is basically a pitch perfect for what it needs to be boomer shooter, as you know, as we say. It's just absolutely worth checking out. If you're on the fence, I'd recommend checking out Skill Up's video on it. And if you're maybe worried that it's one of those absurdly high skill ceiling, like quite hard to get into, more modern boomer shooters, then no, don't worry. I think it's definitely designed that anybody who's vaguely interested in that overall aesthetic could get into it. One of the criticisms I've heard is that, like, yeah, the Boltgun actually feels so good that you may not want to use other things. Which, I mean, is actually a valid design criticism, but hey, anyone does a Boltgun good, and get a thumb up in my book. So, next thing then. I just wanted to call this out. It's not enough for a full story, but it is some tweets from the people who have made failed games. This is just a little thing that, you know, Game Dev Twitter was doing. People sharing, you know, what was the last project, or, you know, your lowest rated project. Because at the end of the day, you have a set of skills, you're a professional, you move from project to project to project. Some of them will be stinkers, some of them will be brilliant. Look at how many brilliant actors or directors just have a few shitty movies on their Rotten Tomatoes list. It is what it is. And I just think it's interesting. So here's Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Breakpoint. Not a great game. So here's this fella saying, not enough time, too much content. We managed to turn it around after a lot of updates, but it was too late. There you go. Worked on the last thing, Operation Motherland. And that's exactly what happened with this game. It was absolutely up shit creek, as he's saying. There wasn't enough time. There was too much game. They couldn't make it all good. This game ended up, of course, being a laughingstock when it came out. Tried as hard as they could. And at the end of the day, whatever people say, like lazy devs and stuff, no. It is somebody who has been given a task that fundamentally doesn't work by a leader who doesn't understand. And that's why the game's not good. Another perfect example of that is Anthem. Here, tweet from Ian. I learned a lot in this project. We knew it wasn't ready. And that's the thing. You see all those shit show games like Lord of the Rings, Gollum. Do you think anyone who worked on Lord of the Rings Gollum thought, I know what we should do? Release Lord of the Rings Gollum? No, absolutely not. Look, that game could have been a 7 out of 10 probably if it was polished up and the stealth was good and the bugs were gone, but that shit takes time. Leaders were obviously not willing to give that any time. This game was created in 15 months and you're like, no, Anthem was developed for years. Yeah, how many of those years mattered? Barely any. Just like that with Overwatch 2. The PvP bit was made very quickly at the end because they needed something. Anthem 2 would have been great, and you know what? Fair enough. Because flying around with the mech suits was pretty sweet, like pretty sick. I like that. There were good parts to Anthem. It's just, you can't pull a game like that together in 15 months. I know that like Mass Effect 3 was made in something ridiculous like 18 months, but at least with Mass Effect 3, they knew what it was. You know, you don't have unknown unknowns in Mass Effect 3. It's like, okay, start to end, we gotta make the game, let's go. But this, when you have, you don't really know what the game is, this is after years of chaos. Man, crazy. Here's another one, Battlefield 2042. Now, I may do a video on this game soon because it actually is so much better than it was at its launch. It's insane. They have actually done a lot of work improving, and they've announced that they're actually going to be extending their support from this game beyond its 5th season, which is just to say that, like, hey, whenever something's not great, you can work hard and you can reclaim stuff. I'm not saying this is a No Man's Sky. I'm not saying it's a perfect game. You know, I basically almost had a seizure whenever I logged into it a few days ago, whenever I saw its UI and got very confused. But I'll tell you what, when I hopped in, I actually really had fun playing it. So, you know, they have done good work. They have tried. And as we knew from the leakers, this project was made at a studio that was just a revolving door of staff. You know, it was a total shit show chaos. Losing a lot of the senior staff as well, right? The people who actually have got that experience. And, you know, yeah, they've stuck with. This game had many iterations, and the deadline never changed much, so never stood much chance being great at launch. And there you go, from Joachim here. It's like there, yeah. It had no chance. I mean, if the game keeps on changing, but the deadline doesn't change, oh dear, because that deadline was thought up with the initial scope of the game. So if that scope chops and changes, and, you know, we've heard things about, like, the Battle Royale element and all of this stuff with Battlefield 2042, you know, from some of the leaks. So, just a good example of, like, I bring this up, and this is like a video I just released, or just put out on the channel, about Eric Covington over at Blizzard. I think it's worth putting the human face on these developers, because often you actually have people, they turn up to work, they try really fucking hard to make the game good, when it's a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 800 man team. You know, like, wow, 650, 750 people. When it's that much, there's no amount of lazy devs or unlazy devs that is going to change things. Now we are managing a, like, I don't know, battalion, a platoon, who I don't know the military correct numbers, but it comes down to command and leadership, and that is what messes up our games. Speaking of one, Darktide. Just wanted to point out a little bit about Darktide. I think it's really important that whenever a game comes out and is a shit show and we all clown on it, when those developers stick with the game, I think it's good that we also check in every now and then, because you don't want to just, you know, you don't want to only punish, because whenever the good shit happens, you should reward the good shit, because you want more people to think that doing the good shit will be rewarded, right? As basics. So, the process of fixing this game is currently happening. We've got the Rejects Unite patch that's coming, and it's a part of the Skulls event for the Warhammer franchise. It's the biggest content patch that the game has had. It adds cross-play across the PC platforms. Yo, Steam, Microsoft Store, Epic Games Store. Imagine, there's like 3 people playing it over at Epic together. 2 new map layouts, 4th monster boss, started community events, some new cosmetics that are purchasable with the base in-game currency that you've been earning, right? This also does mean reopening the premium currency shop, and also just like sweep the balancing bugs, that kind of thing. Overall, they are basically fixing things up. The game is improving quality of life, that kind of thing, responding directly to the players. That's what our sort of research into the topic has brought up. Now, also, this patch did cause AMD GPUs to stop launching the game. But after a weekend of chaos, that has been fixed. Now, that being said, Xbox port, no sign of that yet. But honestly, what's the point in doing that until the core game is good? So, just to point out they're doing that. Also, a little bit in the remake train. System Shock. Yeah, the System Shock remake is actually out. And whenever I looked at these, basically it seems like it is a true classic game. You know, like, it looks like a modern game in all those ways, but as a game, it still is that design. And for some people, they will want the design to be modernized some of those creature comforts. For others, they just want System Shock looking mighty good. And it does seem they've actually done that. So I think if you're potentially interested in this game, but, you wouldn't mind it looking kind of shiny and immersive, then you can do that. And it does seem like it's going to be a good time. And finally, we have People Make Games, who've released another incredible video. It's so cool seeing People Make Games. Actually, I met their founder at, he was, doing sort of like beat work for, I was covering like a Blizzard event. It was cool. I met him, and, when he was talking to me, he was like, oh, because at the time he was working at Eurogamer, I think. And, it was like, I was there because I do YouTube stuff. And he was like, oh man, so we shoot the shit for a little bit. It's not like we, talk that much. But it's just cool to see People Make Games actually do really incredible work. And it's like, oh, nice. I met that guy back before he did this. Cool. It's like him and his team, it's like they had an ambition. They had a dream to make something. And it really seems like they've done that, which is just really heartwarming and nice. But yes, they did work here. This is on the Disco Elysium ZAUM situation. They talk about the labyrinthine structure of shareholders and owners pre- and post-release, the very bizarre business dealings that may have gone on between key creatives and investors around potential sequels, every party, basically where every party is now and what they're actually working on, including a bombshell that the fired creatives have been giving a deal with NetEase. That's it. You're gonna do all your, our anti-capitalist comrades are working with NetEase, the big money people, the big money people. Lamau, and how this has actually impacted the people who literally made the game. And suffice to say, it doesn't look good for anyone because it's a messy situation. But that thing about the core creatives, honestly, they seem like they were fucking pricks to work with. And I get it. Sometimes, you have a half-insane alcoholic creative who just, splutters out some genius every now and then. But ultimately, if you treat your staff in a shitty manner, then you've treated your staff in a shitty manner. 2.5 hours. So if you have, if you need some interesting journalism, a good story, one full of drama, intrigue, and the poor bastards at People Make Games having to work out what's even going on in this story, all backed up by a whole bunch of just really nice artwork that they commissioned for the piece. Check it out. Yeah, check it out. Hit up People Make Games next. They absolutely deserve your view in this one. They've done wonderful work. And of course, that does bring us to the end of today's episode. So that's it for me. Do you know what? I'll hand it over to People Make Games. Check them out next. It's a really good piece of work. All right. I will see you later, and enjoy.